Thank God, here we are on the ground, still Jews. Shalom Asani Goy, Shalom Asani Ovid, Shalom Asani Isha. Now we're learning about Pesach. We're learning about Pesach. We're learning about Rosh Hashanah, the sounding of the shofar. And the Rebbe is saying that what is going to evoke this big shofar in the future is precisely those people who can't do anything. The Ovdim and the Nidachim. Those people who are lost in the land of Ashur and the people who are pushed away in Egypt, they're the ones that are going to cause this shofar to be sounded on its own. And that's why it says it's going to be sounded on its own, because they can't do anything. They're unable, or so they think, to arouse God in any way. They don't want anything to do with it. They don't want anything to do with Hashem. Some of them don't even know they're Jews. They're totally, what do you call it, incapacitated. Good word, incapacitated. They have no abilities as far as Judaism goes. And they're the ones that are going to cause this big shofar to be sounded. Precisely because they're so far away, and precisely because the connection that Hashem has to the Jewish people is totally above and beyond any connection, any sort of love, any sort of care that we could possibly imagine. And that's what's going to cause this big shofar to be sounded. Okay. And then the Rebbe says, and not only that, when this big shofar is sounded, therefore a regular shofar is not going to help them, number one. And this is also a totally different type of a shofar. This is a shofar that shows on God's love to us. And also, way down deep, the desire of every Jew to serve God. Every Jew, without exception. And this desire that every Jew has to serve God down deep, this is what, you can't call it even unconscious or subconscious or pre-conscious, or it's just from the essence of a Jew. There's nothing to do with his consciousness whatsoever. It's totally out of the picture. He's lost, totally lost. It's like sometimes they have, I remember they had, it's something like that. Anyway, they had these sort of dynasties of Chassidim in, I guess it was Poland, Hungary. And the Nazis killed them all out. They killed them all. There was one dynasty which was called Antenia. I learned in a kollel, when I was in Bnei Brak, I learned in a kollel which is called Kollel Antenia. And some of the Hasidim, they survived. I think it was from Hungary. Some of the Hasidim survived. They killed the Rebbe, they killed everybody. I read some of the Hasidut that the Rebbe wrote. It was really very, very nice. It was really very deep and very nice, very beautiful. A different sort of style, but it was very, in any case, they killed him, they killed his family, they killed everybody. So they decided to go around, they came to America, became very successful businessmen, or they were in Israel, whatever it was, like maybe in Israel. Anyway, they became very successful businessmen. Some of those who either they had fled or they survived, and they decided they wanted to find the Rebbe, some relative of the Rebbe, and he would become Rebbe. So they looked around, searched around, and they found this simple Jew that he had been like a cousin, I think, something like that. Anyway, some sort of a relative, and he was almost totally oblivious of the fact. He was also a businessman. And they came to him and they said, listen, we'll give you everything you want. You have to, for the sake of the Chassidut. And they explained it was for his father and everything. And he said, okay, he'll do it for the sake of their Chassidut. And he became their Rebbe. He lived for a few years. I knew him. He was a very, very simple person. Very, very simple person. And he admittedly said he didn't really know much Torah at all. A very nice person, very, pleasant sort of a person. But he was forced to. It's somewhat the same thing over here, right? Hashem is looking around for these Jews that they're Jews. They don't even know what it is. He's just looking around for them. They don't know they have a connection to the king, to the leader, to the Rebbe, to this. All of a sudden, it's just what's going to wake them up is this big shofar. The big shofar will sound, and all of a sudden, all these Jews will come back. Like I said before, something like that happened in the 6-Day War. That all these totally unaffiliated or anti-Jews, Jews that didn't even know they were Jews, Jews in Russia, Jews in this, that had 4 or 5 generations, they didn't know they were Jewish. And suddenly everything shook and everything woke up. So says the Rebbe that this gives an elevation, this shofar gives an elevation. It gives an awareness of identity. Again, what does it mean, an elevation? There's this, they say it's a Rabbi Nachman story about a person that thinks he's the king's son goes crazy and he thinks he's a chicken. And he goes onto the table and he's pecking around and the king is very ashamed. He doesn't know what to do. And finally he gets one wise man who sits under the table with him and, says, I'm also a chicken. He doesn't talk for the first year or who knows how long. And he just sits there and he pecks and he does whatever he has to do until finally he puts on a pair of pants. He says, listen, chickens can put on pants. And he puts on a shirt, the new person. Suddenly, that's not the point of the story, at least as far as I'm telling it. The point of the story is finally the king's son, he comes back, he stops being a chicken, and he realizes he's a human being, and he realizes not just a human being, that he's the king's son. Well, that's what's called an elevation. An elevation was a person that really, truly, honestly thinks he's a chicken, or that he's some sort of a beast, and suddenly he realizes, no, he's not just a beast, that he's a human being. That's an elevation. It means, what does it mean, elevation? He has more responsibility. Suddenly he's got more responsibility. Then he realizes, well, I'm not just a regular person. I'm the son of the king. Right? It's the prince. I've got tremendous responsibility. That means an elevation. That's what it means. So that says the Rebbe that when all the Jews do tshuva because of this big shofar, so it gives them an elevation and also gives an elevation to the countries from which they come, to the whole world where they are. Because if it wasn't for that, they would have never been in exile. They would have never known, they would have never aroused the king to make a special effort to look for them. That's why we say a Baal Tshuva is higher than a regular person. That's what's sort of lacking from the parable about the son under the table. Here we're not trying to restore the son back to his original glory. We're trying to make a whole new thing. A whole new thing. Jews that have come back to Hashem. It's a whole brand new, total different level, which is not dealt with in that metaphor of the king's son under the table. So that's what it's saying. The Jews become a new type of Jew, a new type of something that wasn't even with Adam, higher than Adam was, in a way. It says that's what it says, that this song, the shofar, this will arouse the Jews in Egypt, etc. This will make an aliyah, an elevation, also in the countries where they are. Also, America becomes elevated, England becomes elevated, Russia becomes elevated, and Eretz Mitzrayim. Why? Because the whole intention why the Jews were redeemed, I think we did this yesterday. the whole intention and reason why the Jews were redeemed, why the Jews were put into exile, into these different places in the world, until that by means of this they become lost and they become pushed away. The whole reason there is such a thing is in order that by means of the gullus and by means of this narrowness, and especially the narrowness and the lostness of these people who are in ovdim and nidachim, this will arouse and draw down this big shofar. So in other words, the job is not just to arouse the Jews and make them come back to Judaism. The idea is to arouse this big shofar that's going to be sounded. And then it's going to be we'll realize that being a Jew is greater than being, the king of America, the king of whatever, to be a multi-trillionaire, to be the most popular, to be a Jew. See, now in the world, what's going on in the world? We judge ourselves according to other people. What the world says is important, that's what we say is important. If the whole world respects us, there's nothing greater than that. Right? If the whole world is friends with us, right? This is a tremendous accomplishment. Our life is worthwhile. Right? Your name, you get your name in the newspaper, you get your name and you have 15 zeros after the first number in your bank account. This is then you're big shot. You're okay. You made it. Says the Rebbe, being a Jew is greater incomparably to any of those things. And that's only going to be revealed when the great shofar is sounded. Al Yedei, by means of this, so the Jewish people, they become a totally higher level than even before they were put into exile. Even before, higher than Adam, first man, when he was created, before he sinned. Therefore, when this big shofar is sounded, right? Therefore, when this big shofar is sounded, there will be finished the intention that for it, the world, Eretz Ashur and Eretz Mitzrayim were created. And there'll be an elevation also in them. So in other words, the whole world will be looked at in a totally different way. According to this, we can also add another thing on with the big shofar in Rosh Hashanah. In Rosh Hashanah, there are two things. First of all, it is the day Yom Bria Sa'adam. It's the day that man was created. And by means of this, man was created. When man was created, it made an elevation in the whole entire creation. So two things were happened on Rosh Hashanah. Man was created, and it was the finishing of creation. We did this yesterday, right? This is what says the Admon Rashab, the Rebbe Rashab, Nishma Seiden, in his Maamar, which was called Zeh Yom Techilas Masecha Zichron Yom Rishon. This is part of the liturgy that we say in the Rosh Hashanah prayers. We say this very strange sentence. Zeh Hayom Techilas Masecha, this is the day that you began to create the world. A remembrance for the first day when you began to create the world. Let's look at the sentence again. It seems to contradict itself. This is the day that you began to create the world. This is the day you began to create the world. And it is a memory reminding us of the day you began to create the world. I mean, the first part of the sentence, at first glance, is not necessary. Just say, this is the day that we remember the first day of creation. This is not the first day of creation. If anything, Rosh Hashanah is the sixth day of creation. That's when he created man. So if so, this is a day that's a remembrance of the sixth day of creation, not the first day of creation. So the Rebbe is going to say that in this sentence are two things: God creating the world and God creating man. God creating man, that's what it means. This is the day, the beginning of your deeds. The real beginning of the the final world, like the first car comes off of the assembly line, when it's finished, not when the first person puts on the first bolt or whatever. But it says, but this is the day when the world was finished. But as a remembrance for the first day of creation, number one, when God just started to create the world. What's this mean? Now the Rebbe is going to ask the question. We have to understand. Rosh Hashanah is on the first day of Tishrei. And the first day of Tishrei, which is the day that God created the man, the sixth day of creation. We celebrate the sixth day of creation, not the first day. How can this day be a remembrance for the first day? 6 days after. But like I said yesterday, right? If you buy your wife a bouquet of flowers and say, this is for our anniversary. And she says, our anniversary was a week ago. You forgot it totally. Right? The same thing. We're celebrating 6 days too late the creation of the world. The creation of the world was 6 days before on the 25th day of Elul. Why do we say today is the first day of creation? So it explains that God's desire to create the world, this is what's called God's external desire. True, it's God's desire, but it's an external, a desire for something else. It's not a final stage. Upanimis or ratzon, the inner will, is in the Jewish people. Right? It's like a person wants a cake, so he goes out and he buys eggs and flour and whatever, the milk, and buys all these things, and that's it. He wants a cake. Here's the ingredients. So what's this? Says, listen, without the ingredients, you can't make. But this is not the final point. The same thing. God created the world the first day, second day. That was just the ingredients. The whole thing all came together when He created man. It says that which God created the world on the first day of creation began on the first day of creation, the 25th day of Elul. That was just the external will. That was like buying the flour and the eggs and things like that. Paninius will, the real inner desire, what God had was the finished product, the Jewish people. These two seemingly opposite things. Number one, the creation of the world and the creation of man. Bizmani Ashana, in the days of the year, dates, is the 25th day of El, that's God's external will. And on Rosh Hashanah, that's God's internal will, when man was created. On the 25th day of Elul, that in it the world was created. It says that on the first day, really, God created the whole world at once. And then He brought it out into Revelation on the ensuing days. Who is the Chitzoni Saratzon? That God created the world on the 25th day of Elul, and we don't celebrate that. That's God's external will. But Rosh Hashanah, which is 6 days later, the first day of Tishrei, Shabon Nivra Adam, that was the day that man was created. And Atem Kruim Adam, and it ended up that this becomes the Jewish people. That's why only the Jewish people celebrate Rosh Hashanah. I mean, the whole world was created. The first man was man of everybody, right? Everybody came from the first man, but only the Jews celebrated. Why? Because the purpose of man was to give meaning to the entire world, to serve God and give entire. So therefore, this is the inside will of God. And that's what we celebrate on Rosh Hashanah. This is why it's called the beginning of your deeds. This is the day when God finished the creation. The finished product came off the assembly line. Okay, now let's see what it does. But still, it shouldn't forget its purpose. Man should not forget his purpose. True, we celebrate every year the creation of man on Rosh Hashanah, but man can't forget his purpose. We always have to have a zichron remembering the first day, namely the world. The world that was created on the first day. First day was on the 25th of Elul. So therefore, in Rosh Hashanah, there are two topics. The main thing of Rosh Hashanah is that it's the beginning of God's deeds, creation of man. And man, he can defy nature, transform nature. Hamshachat Atzmut, drawing down the essence of Or Ein Sof, which is above Ratzon Olamot, which is above God's desire to create the world, because creating the world is just the inner will of God. Is this the outer will of God? I'm sorry, the external. Al Yidei Avodas Adam, by means of the service of man, which that's the internal will of Hashem. That's the main thing of Rosh Hashanah, is the creation of man. Man was created to put meaning, blessing in the world. That's Rosh Hashanah. But there's also another thing on Rosh Hashanah, and that is Zichron Liyom Rishon, remembering the first day. What's the first day? And that this drawing down of the essence of God has to be drawn down into God's external will, into the world, into the non-Jews, into the animals, into the trees, into the rocks, into the whole entire world is a big, wondrous, miraculous creation of God. Every instant, God creates it anew. But it's hard for us to imagine such a thing, but that's the fact. And it's all dependent on the Jews. Al Yidei Zeh, by means of this, also in all the worlds, the angels, the levels of being, Yetzirah, Bria, they're all just part of the creation. That's all part of Yom Rishon. And the Jews are here, Rosh Hashanah, to bring meaning into the whole entire world. The sixth day of creation. This is the day where you really began. But we have to always remember the first day. So Zeh Yom Techilat Maasecha, Zeh Yom Techilat Maasecha, that's talking about when man was created. Zichron Yom Rishon, and we must always remember the first day. That's when the world began to be created. That's the world. So in Rosh Hashanah, there's two things, man and the world. The whole reason, man is the most important thing, but the only reason he's here, the most important thing to man, should be the world, fixing the world up. I hope he said, according to this, now we can understand the connection between Shofar Gadol, this big shofar in Rosh Hashanah, it is, and these two things. Number one, Hamshachat Agiloi, the Shofar Gadol, revelation of this big shofar to the Jewish people. This is connected to Techilat Maasecha, when man was made. That's really when the product was finished. That's the, so to speak, the first day of creation. The first car came off the assembly line. Man, finished product. But the purpose of man is Al Yidei Zeh, by means of man serving God, and all the Jews will be elevated. There's an elevation also in Eretz Ashur and Eretz Mitzrayim. And that's connected to Zichron L'Yom Rishon. So it's the same thing is going to be also that happens now in a small way, Rosh Hashanah, that man does the work, and by means of that, it elevates the world. So it's going to be also with the big shofar. It's going to be to elevate all the Jews, even the furthest away Jews. And because of that, it'll give also an elevation, a meaning, a new blessing to the countries where the Jews have been kept prisoner. The countries where the Jews got lost and pushed away. They'll also be elevated, because that's the goal of the Jewish people, is to bring meaning and blessing to the whole world. I've talked about this a lot of times, but there's a lot of people, I guess they say that Bill Gates is supposed to be the main one of them, I don't know. But he says that there's not enough food in the world, not enough food, not enough air in the world, and that we have to do something to get rid of, inferior people, which he says are the blacks or something. I don't know how true all this stuff is, but the fact that there's such a theory, I'm certain. And that is that there's too many people in the world, and the world cannot, as far as I know, the vast majority of economists hold this, these big professors and things like that. And so, maybe they're right. I mean, they have a lot of proofs that they bring, at least, so, but you can't judge the past. You can't judge from the past what's going to be in the future. Because from the past, all these countries which have been, barren and, not productive, they've been that way because they've been doing the same thing to the Jews. They've been keeping the Jews barren and not productive. And as soon as the big shofar sounds, and all of these Jews that are pushed away, suddenly they wake up, whoa, I'm a Jew, and they start serving Hashem, then the world is going to change also. The ground will be more fertile, and there won't be diseases. The world can get along very well without diseases, without war, and without hatred and pestilence and those things. No problem. The world can get along with that, despite what everybody seems to think. There's tremendous, tremendous potential in the earth, in the sea, in the air, in the sun, which has been totally, totally untapped. The Rebbe had a beautiful sikha about that when there was Kiddush Levana, Kiddush Hashemesh, I'm sorry. It's like, 50 years ago, something. And that's what's going to come out, the potential of all the Jews. When that's revealed, then the potential of the whole world will also be revealed. And that's this idea of the big shofar. So it's not just this religious idea, a nice sort of, nostalgic, metaphorical, thing you could write a play about or something. It's not. This is real reality, so real that we really can't comprehend it. That's why we need the Rebbe. If it wasn't for the Rebbes, we would never. It's just a miracle that we're learning these things. It really is. It's just an incredible miracle and gift. According to what we said before, from the Jewish of Admor Morash, that namely we said that the shofar has to be narrow on one side, and that this is what's talking about Shana Sharasha B'tchila, when the year is poor in the beginning. What does it mean, poor in the beginning? Namely, that the Jewish people, osim atzmam, they make themselves poor on Rosh Hashanah. And again, what does it mean we should make ourselves poor? Who is a poor person? A poor person is a person that has nothing. He has nothing of his own, truly poor. He lacks everything. That's really, really poor. And when we think about it, that's exactly who we are. Everything we have, everything we are, is not ours. It's a free gift from Hashem. And not only that, we ourselves are not ours. We're being created by God. It's an amazing, incredible miracle. A kindness beyond belief. And of course, God is creating all humanity, He's creating all being. But our job, Jews, is to really realize this. That's the beginning of the year. We're supposed to realize, hey, I'm just a creation. I don't really deserve anything. I mean, I am not anything. When you make yourself poor on Rosh Hashanah and realize this is the day when God created the world, finished creating the world from nothing. He created man from nothing. You make yourself humble, poor in the beginning, moving, so now we can understand that this meitzar, this narrowness, which before we attributed only to these Jews that are pushed away and the Jews that are lost, they're the ones that are going to cause the shofar. And what about us? We're sitting and learning the Torah. We're not the ones that are causing the shofar. It's these Jews that don't know anything. They're the ones that are causing it, right? So what part do we play in the whole thing? Says the Rebbe, those Jews that are pushed away and that are lost, those Jews are much closer to us than we think. It's us. It's me. This whole idea of, I do Torah, I do the commandments, I keep Shabbos, I have tzitzis on, I eat kosher food. What do you mean? I'm one of the pushed away, the lost people in Egypt. How can that be? I have a beard, I try to do all the commandments. I'm lost in Egypt. I'm lost in Mitzrayim. What does this mean? Says the Rebbe, when you come to Rosh Hashanah, suddenly you realize that you are just as far away from everything that you're doing is only a gift from Hashem. Only a gift from Hashem. I know people personally. Have you ever seen people that, like, they have Alzheimer's, or there's something goes wrong with their mind, and that's it. They just don't remember anything. They have no perception, that they're of Torah and commandments and who they are. That's just a simple example. So really, anything that we have, right? Anything that we have, in one way, it's really not ours. We have zero. You can say even zero credits. I made the right choice. I try not to steal from people. I try to tell the truth. I've been successful up to now. That's a little bit of merits, isn't it? So listen, the only reason you were able to do these things is because you were healthy and you were normal. And also God gave you the opportunity, the option. And true, you made the free choice, but who gave you free choice? God gives you free choice. When you start to think about that, you think, wow, this is really amazing, So if so, why should I do the Torah and the commandments? Oh, that's very important to God. Very important. What are you talking about? It's very important to Hashem. So I do have some merits, right? I do have that's very important to Hashem. That's Hashem's business. That's not your business. That's Hashem's business. How the whole thing figures out, that's Hashem's business. Your business is to know that the happiest, most meaningful thing that you can do is to be a servant of God, to wake up like one of the people lost in Egypt. That's your job. Merits, forget about. Forget about. You'll always be miserable. Think about, I'm able to get more merit from this one. The Inyan Meitzar, that's the whole idea of this narrowness, that by means of it we can draw down. We said the wideness of this big shofar. This is when the narrowness comes from bitul. It comes from realizing that you're nothing. And everything you have is this amazing free gift. Shavudah, so your service is b'shleimus. You are doing all the Torah, you're doing the mitzvahs. Ela mitzara bittul, but because of his humility, who margish, he feels, shu nimtza b'eit meitzar, that he's found in a narrow place, that he has nothing, no merits whatsoever. Gam al yedei meitzar zeh, only by means of this, hu amshachas hamerchav, can you draw down wideness. Only by means of realizing the truth. That we really have nothing, we really are nothing. It's all an amazing gift from Hashem. By means of this, we think, listen, I'm just so lucky that I can serve Hashem. That Hashem doesn't, keeps me going. Al derech zeh, similarly is, I had a friend. This was how long ago? 50 years ago. Huh? No, 45 years ago. 50, his name was Azriel Wasserman. We were good friends in Hadar HaTorah, the Baal Tshuva Yeshiva. And he passed away at 35 years old. They even called me to come to his bedside. He wanted to see me, whole story. Anyway, he passed away at 45. He was 35 years old, something like that, 35. He was a genius person, very nice person. And Hashem decided that's it. So, at that moment, I thought, I'm pretty lucky to be alive, there was no real sort of understandable reason why he is under the ground and I'm on the ground. Now, when a person dies, his soul still exists and all this stuff, but still, he can't do Torah, he can't do mitzvahs, and that's not the ideal state to be dead. There's going to be the raising of the dead. That's what the Chassidic Jews at least believe. That being dead and being in heaven or whatever, that's not an ideal state. The ideal state is the raising of the dead. So, being dead is not a good thing. And suddenly you realize it seems sort of like arbitrary, anybody can just, and that's nothing compared to what it was in the Holocaust. People were just, here you have one person dying and the whole city mourns him. In the Holocaust, the whole city was dead and only one person was left to mourn. So just in a simple, external way, we have to realize we don't really have anything. And if you think about it in a Chassidic way, is that you don't have to go to death or negative things. Just very simply, God is just creating us from nothing. So it could be that a person is totally, completely serving God, and we're not one of those. I'm not one of those guys who was pushed away and lost in Egypt and in Eretz Ashur. Not me. The Rabbi said, oh yeah, that's what you think. If you're not like that, if you think you're something special, then you're missing the whole point of Rosh Hashanah. The purpose of Rosh Hashanah is to realize that you really are in the ultimate distance from Hashem. That's why who benogea legila shofar revelation of this big shofar. Shemitorer v'nimshach, which is drawn down by means of a meitzar, the lost people, and the nidachim, those people are pushed away. The gam keshavodas abashlemos, even when a person is serving God, but he starts to think that in comparison to Hashem, gam avodah miti, true service of Hashem, lechet yachshav, it's like nothing. Used to have all the time, used to be, the Sephardic tzaddikim was one of their noticeable traits, and all of them was total humility. Total humility. These were people that was not relevant. When they had to stand up for Judaism, they were lions, because that was Hashem's. That was Hashem's battle they were fighting, King David. But otherwise, they were the ultimate humility. They were tzaddikim. They knew the whole Torah. They knew all of Kabbalah. They knew whether they were certainly doing Torah mitzvahs. They had congregations of thousands of people. Just the other day was the yortzeit of the Ben Ish Chai, Chacham Yosef Chaim. And these people were like the ultimate power, but they were ultimate humility. They realized very clearly that everything they had was from Hashem, and that all the mitzvahs that they did were really nothing, zero, compared to what they owed God. And therefore, when a person feels this, because the Rebbe is telling us this, so we're relevant to this level. Therefore, he feels, every Jew feels himself, La'ovid v'nidach. I am lost and I'm pushed away. It's just a miracle that Hashem keeps creating me. The Al Yudeza, by means of this, in this order, there is aroused in every Jew. Nimshach Hagilui, there is revealed this big shofar. The Yesh Lomar, and we can say, Shegam Az, that even then, when there's this revelation of the big shofar, and it comes by means of our own humility, nevertheless, it is still yitaka. It is still that the shofar is sounded on its own, not because of what we do. Right? That was the question of the Mimor. The question of the Mimor was, the question of the Mimor was, the whole point of the shofar shows on our service of Hashem, what we do, and that causes God to react. And the big shofar is God does it all on his own. Yitaka, the shofar is sounded on its own, like automatically, without what we do. And here the Rebbe is saying, no, our humility causes it. Says, no, even though that our humility causes the shofar to be sounded, nevertheless, it is still relevant that we're doing it, but nevertheless, it is sounded on its own. It has nothing to do with our service. Why? When you make yourself poor and empty, the making yourself poor is that you have nothing of your own. If so, then hu rak mekabel zeh, he only receives the fact shenotnim lo b'derech tzedakah, that everything I have and everything, including this attitude of being humble, this is given to me by charity. Who makir margish, who he recognizes and reveals, so that this, by means of his service and his humility, is drawn down the revelation of godliness of this big shofar. This is not because I've done it. It's lo bitzur ilusho. It's not because of my greatness. That which my humility and my total surrender to Hashem, this causes the big shofar to be sounded. It's not that it really caused it. Ella mitzad chesed HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the kindness of God. Yitaka ba'atzmo. The shofar is sounded on its own. It's as though that this amazing revelation that I made because of my humility and my service of Hashem, it's as though that I didn't do anything at all. Believe without any arousal from below at all. Again, let's think about this. Let's think it. You know what? A lot of Jews, a lot of religious Jews, they say it's impossible. This is generally the whole idea of the Litvische Jews and the what's called the Misnagdim, that we cannot affect God. This is also like the Kabbalah, the Gaon of Vilna, that he was like the father of the whole, Litvische, whatever called movement, as he wrote a lot of books of Kabbalah. But they were all based on this one basic idea that God, when he created the world, he removed himself from the world. The world is a sort of a separate entity from God. It's called Tzimtzum K'Peshuto. As a result, God really is not affected by our prayers or our learning or our this. He's not affected by our prayers. And if it wasn't that there were certain people that were very proud of this, I would say it was Lashon Hora, but it's not. There are people that are very proud of this. But nevertheless, I want to say any more than that. They believe that God is so far away from us that he can't be affected by our prayers or our deeds or whatever. Okay, now these are not stupid people, and they were also very big Kabbalists, and they've got a very good point. And the point is that God is above being infinite, and we're only finite. How can we affect Hashem? Okay, according to Kabbalah of the Arizal and of the Ramban, and it's not so. God is certainly definitely affected by what we do. But the Rebbe says over here, good, yes, God is affected by what we do, and he's pleased by what we do, but don't fool yourself for even one instant to think that we, in some way or other, can be a separate entity from Hashem. We're really causing Hashem to do these things. The only reason that we are causing God to react is because that's the way God set up the world. If it's a miracle that God is creating us, it's a miracle of miracles that God reacts to what we do. Maybe we can even say a triple miracle. God creates the world, that's a big miracle. God gave us the Torah, that's even a deeper miracle. That God reacts to what we do, this is God's essence. This is above, we can't describe what a miracle it is. It says the Rebbe, that's what happens on Rosh Hashanah. When on Rosh Hashanah we reveal this, we realize it, that we are being created by God all the time from nothing. And if so, how am I here? It's an amazing miracle. This is incredible how good God is. In a way, you're supposed to start davening every day with this thought in mind. How really good Hashem is, he's creating me. But especially on Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is like the beginning, the head of all this. When you think that I am, this humility causes God to sound the great shofar. Oh, so I'm doing something. He says, no. Who determined that God would react? God himself. So therefore, it comes out that if we can get to this attitude, then we become like the people who are pushed away in Egypt, etc. So let's just do one more line here. We'll continue tomorrow, Friday, not tomorrow. Well, the Hosea, if we can add in, this is what it says. That's what the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe says, right? The Rebbe is quoting the Rebbe's. In his Mimor Pt1, Bayom, ההוא יתקע בשופר גדול, but the same exact name. The Rebbe said it in 1943, previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, that this big shofar will arouse the inner point of Judaism in every single Jew. So therefore, every single Jew, even those who are lost, those Jews who are pushed away, they will want to come out of the exile and to go to Jerusalem and to bow down to Hashem, because that's what the essence of a Jew is. This is by means of we'll do this over, God willing, tomorrow. This is by means of the revelation of the big shofar. It will arouse the true inner desire of every Jew. So the true desire, inner desire of Hashem is the Jewish people, even if they don't do anything Jewish. And the true inner desire of every single Jew, even these Jews that are the furthest away, and the Rebbe said, who are these Jews that are furthest away? Us. The true desire of every Jew is to go to Jerusalem and serve Hashem, of course, in the Holy Temple, and serve Hashem. That's the difference between the future redemption and when the Jews, the redemption going out of Egypt and the redemption now. When the Jews left Egypt, their desire was to go away, run from the evil of Egypt, the defilement, and to come closer to Hashem. This came what? From Hashem himself. Hashem did the whole thing himself. We see that the Jews, every opportunity that they had, they said, oh yeah, let's go back to Egypt. That's what it says. Mishcheni, the God, he drew us. He did it all. In the future redemption, this desire to go out of the exile and to come to Jerusalem, this will be our desire. This revelation from above, this big shofar, this will only be like a switch that'll turn on the true inner desire of every Jew. And then our service to Hashem, our desire to come to Jerusalem, won't because Hashem took us out and Hashem is pushing us and we're inside of this cloud, God tells us where to go. No, it'll be the Jewish people who want to do it on their own. This is the thing of Rosh Hashanah, that we're doing it. Rosh Hashanah is our service. But those people who are lost and they're pushed away, those Jews that are really far from Hashem, then this will be after the sounding of the shofar, and by means of this, it'll reveal the true will of everyone. But the revelation of this big shofar, yes, it will come from above, true, but the main thing of Rosh Hashanah is that we act like Jews. That's one way. For the people who are lost in Egypt, this comes by means of Hashem does it. And by us, the big shofar comes by means of our service first. That's Rosh Hashanah. We'll go over this, God willing, tomorrow. But mainly what the Rebbe is saying is this big shofar is the essence of Hashem speaking to the essence of every Jew. God willing, we'll learn more about this tomorrow. Okay, now we'll learn